Hello and welcome to the Breastfeeding Conclave organized by Voice of Healthcare. This is of course, respecting the Breastfeeding Week, which is globally celebrated, and the theme for this year is protecting breastfeeding and talking about and with the focus of how it is a shared responsibility and not just the mother's responsibility. I'm your host for this session. My name is Rashmi Putra. I run a platform called Ainari, which is a women's health platform focused on healing and balancing hormones naturally. And I'm honored to be your host for this session. Like I said earlier, this is being organized by Voice of Healthcare, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank MCure Pharmaceuticals for sponsoring this particular event. And today we have two wonderful women who are joining us on the panel. We have Dr. Mahima Bakshi, and we have Archana Barman Khosla. I'll let them introduce themselves because I think it won't be enough for me to say. I think both of them have done very, very well. So over to you, Dr. Mahima. Should we start with you? Would you like to introduce yourself? Dr. Mahima, could you say a few lines? Could you introduce yourself, please? Okay, looks like there's a glitch on her side, and so I think we'll come back to her in the meanwhile. Maybe Archana, you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Rashmi. Very good morning, everyone. Thank you, Khushbu and the team Voice of Healthcare for getting all of us together to discuss a very relevant topic. I'm Archana Khosla Burman. I'm the founder of Vertices Partners, which is a leading law firm which specializes in venture capital and private equity investments. If I had to put it, in short, I love what I do. Given that I deal day in and out with entrepreneurs at different levels and scales of their journeys, and being an entrepreneur myself, it's a wonderful feeling to be a part of another entrepreneur's growth story, whatever little it can be. So I love it. I work a lot in the women entrepreneurs and women leaders space as well. I'm heading the startup vertical of some of the leading chambers of commerce, and I've created a platform to help women think, build, scale, pitch, and fund. We are also encouraging women to become investors themselves in addition to just getting funded. A little bit on my fun side, I'm an eternal optimist. I'm very passionate about music. I have done training in Indian classical music. I am a mother to a beautiful son who's 3 years old now. Getting to know him as he develops is one of the most rewarding parts of being a parent, I would say. Learning how he views the world, teaching him new skills, and mentoring him as he processes big new feelings and changes is the part I absolutely love about being a parent. So that's a little about myself.
Thanks, Archana. I think we have Dr. Mahima back over here with us. Dr. Mahima, I'm not sure you heard the last bit. I was just asking you to introduce yourself. I think we lost you somewhere in the middle. Dr. Mahima, are you there?
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Your screen is frozen, but yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect.
But please go ahead. We can hear you.
Introduction of Archana, and thank you. Right. So I'm Dr. Mahima Bakshi. I'm a
Dr. Mahima, yeah, we couldn't hear you at all. We lost you. So
major signal is audible.
No problem. No problem. Please continue.
Yeah, now I'm audible?
Yes, you are.
Great. So I'm a maternal child wellbeing coach, and I'm founder owner of Birthing Naturally Queen, which is an online pageant to spread awareness on maternal mental health. And I'm also author of the book Birthing Naturally, which is to coach women in pregnancy on the maternal well-being aspect. And I have just finished my second book, which is on promoting breastfeeding and maternal well-being after having a baby, which is getting published end of this year.
Very interesting. So just to, it's good knowing both of you. I think I'll start off with the panel. I should have done this earlier. I love to share the topic of the panel and the discussion today. So today's topic is breastfeeding and work, and let's make it work. So how do we make sure that breastfeeding and work can go hand in hand? Very relevant topic for today's day and time. My first question would be to Archana. How long after childbirth did you return to work? You just mentioned that you have a little boy, and we would love to understand from you how you managed and balanced, having a child and getting back to work.
Right. So thanks, Rashmi. Before I dive into that question around when I return to work, I think it's important for me to share a part of my journey because it's related as to, how the childbirth was and how that led to me starting work at a particular time. And while I've never spoken about this journey of mine in any public forum, I thought it may be relevant because it's time we all should embrace and talk about the issues which we have gone through. So, Rashmi, as you know a little bit about it, I unfortunately had a very complicated childbirth. Just 1 month before the due date, I was, literally minding my own business, sitting in my office at 9 p.m., doing my work. And in fact, Vinayak and I were scheduled to go for a late night movie that night. And, just because a day before I had got some food poisoning, I had scheduled a generic checkup with the radiologist. I just thought I'll go there. It'll take me just 10 minutes, and that's about it. I was feeling perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong at all. So we go there at about 9:15 to the radiologist, thinking we'll get done very quickly. Just when my ultrasound is happening, suddenly, my radiologist, who's otherwise a very calm and composed person, we see a lot of, worry in the way he's looking and talking to us. And then he tells us, Archana, please call your gynecologist. And I'm like, why? What happened? So he says that you'll have to deliver earlier. So, Vinayak and I look at each other in dismay, thinking that, okay, earlier. And the lawyers that we are thinking, okay, probably 15 days earlier. Okay, what about the baby too? So, we need to get that done. The nanny needs to be called beforehand. All of those things are going on in our mind. Then we ask him, how much earlier? And he responds saying, tonight. So,
Wow.
Rashmi, I realized that day that no matter how much we read and know about things, and how much we think we are prepared, we are never prepared for that to happen to us. So basically what had happened, I was diagnosed with a reverse blood flow, because of which the baby wasn't getting the blood, and in fact it was coming back to me. And that is like a death penalty in pregnancy.
Of
And what
course.
we were told was that you have to deliver the baby, otherwise there is a 50-50 chance the baby may not survive. So we rushed to the hospital. I had the most stressful night, followed by the childbirth. I was very happy that, okay, fine, the baby's crying, all is good. And just when you think the misery is over, you realize that this is just the beginning, because the baby is only 1.4 kgs in weight. And he, of course, is in the NICU. There are syringes on him. There are blood transfusions. So it was like a terrible feeling for us as parents to see our child suffer like that.
Of
And on
course.
top of it, the baby is not with me. So I cannot lactate because the baby is not with me, right? So, and then on top of it, the doctor tells me, neonatologist tells me that it'll be best if we can give him mother's milk. Okay, so now an added pressure. I am
Yeah.
not getting any milk, but I know I've been told that if you're able to give that milk to him, your child can survive. I start using the breast pump, right? And I can't explain to you what Vinayak and I went through. I mean, for the first time around, for the first 45 minutes I tried and I got 2 ml of milk. So you can imagine what was going on. And this went on for about a week to 10 days. And it's only then that the milk started, coming a little more. But initially 2 ml, 3 ml, 5 ml, 50 ml. Then it went all the way up to probably 90 ml. So that's what I went through. Then on top of that, when we got back home after a month and a half, it didn't end because he was still underweight. And we were told that you have to do anything. The focus is his weight. And he was not allowed to breastfeed because, again, apparently, when they breastfeed, energy goes and you again tend to lose weight. So I was
Yeah.
supposed to continuously pump milk and give it to him with a bondula. I was not even allowed to use a bottle for him because even that is sucking. Any kind of sucking is disastrous. So that went on for almost 2 months till things started normalizing, and that's when I started breastfeeding him. And then I had those other complications of not being able to, breastfeed in the exact way which I was supposed to. Now the child was also used to bondula, then bottle.
I'm going to interrupt you here because we are going to
Yeah,
come back to the question.
sure, sure.
But of course, your story is, it's. Thank you for sharing it. I think it's a very, very personal story, and thank you for sharing it with us. I can only imagine how hard it must have been. Um, how soon after did you manage to get back to work? Because
So
that must
what
have
I
been, yeah.
Yeah, that was difficult. So it took me, it's a while, because thankfully, because I was, it's my own venture. I started work within 3 months, but that was from home. And gradually I started going to office in the next 6 months, probably, twice in a week. So I had to tend to that as well, because whatever said and done, I had a firm to run and I had salaries to pay. So I did go back within 6 months. What I did was I allocated, I cordoned off space where I was able to breast pump every 2 hours or so. So for me, the saving grace was the comfort of being able to work from home, the flexibility on going physically to office, and adequate breastfeeding or nursing breaks, so I could tend to work and my child. And that's when I decided, Rashmi, that to provide the same benefits and flexibilities to any of my colleagues whenever the need arises, and I still stand by it.
That's fantastic. Dr. Mahima, I'm going to ask you the same question. You must be meeting a lot of women who, go through childbirth. Do you have, when you speak with them, do you know how often and how soon do they get back to work because of availability or non-availability of, breastfeeding facilities at work? Like in Archana's case, because it was her own firm, she could manage to do it. But what's been your experience, speaking with the women who come to you?
Sorry, Rashmi, I couldn't hear your question. Can you please repeat?
Yeah, sure. So I was saying that what has been your experience in dealing with women who, who come to you? How often and how soon do you think they get back to work? And please answer this question, keeping in mind the facilities that workplaces may or may not provide in most cases, breastfeeding facilities to women.
So, most of the women who are into jobs, Rashmi, they mostly have a maternity leave of a paid maternity leave of 6 months, especially into the corporate jobs, which makes it quite easy for women to balance out those exclusive breastfeeding months, which is generally the first 6 months. And I have also seen entrepreneurs where women are quite eager to get back to work. So in that case, for entrepreneurs, it's still easier to manage because it's their own business. So they can always have, the privilege of taking the baby along to office, or if they can work from home and manage, or they can come in between to, back to home to breastfeed the baby. So it is quite manageable for working mothers who are entrepreneurs. But in certain cases, which is also seen in today's time in India, that there are still certain companies who don't offer 6 months of paid maternity leave, which is very sad. So in those cases, it's a mandate for these women to get back to work, either 2 months or 3 months, depending upon the company policy. And not a lot of companies have a provision of daycare, or not a lot of companies offer feeding rooms, or rooms where a mother can sit down calmly and breast pump herself so that she can express the milk for her baby. That becomes very challenging. And I see a lot of these moms, coming back and saying, I have to join back office before 6 months. There's no such provision in office. So I have no option but to give bottle to my baby, or no option but to give formula to my baby. So it becomes very difficult for these women because they undergo a lot of guilt that even though they want to continue breastfeeding, but because of these challenges that they face because of not having enough facility in the office or not having a good company policy that allows them to, have a paid maternity leave for 6 months. Even though they have that guilt, they still, end up giving a formula or a bottle to the baby because they have no other option.
Sure. Thank you. I think, yeah, I have been an entrepreneur myself, and I don't agree with you on the point that it's easier for entrepreneurs to get back to work because sometimes we don't have the choice, to not be able to have that luxury of taking 6 months leave. But yes, I do completely know where you're coming from in terms of how hard it is for women who don't have those company policies. My follow-up question, and this is a question to both of you, because one of you has gone through this, and you, Dr. Mahima, of course, has met women who are going through it or who have gone through it. My question is, with the advancements in science today, we have breast pumps. How difficult or is it easier? Because on one hand, and I'll elaborate my question a little bit, because on one hand, yes, you can breast pump, and you are able to give the nourishment to the baby, but skin to skin contact is also important, right, for both emotional and otherwise. So how does that factor, that get factored into the whole experience? Actually, I'd love to hear from you, because in your case, very unique case, but you did a little bit of both, right? So would love to hear from you, and then we'll move to Dr. Mahima.
Sure. So for me, Rashmi, I used to, crave for that I'm able to breastfeed my child. And I used to, because it was extended, like I told you, right? I couldn't do it right away. So I do it only 6 months later. And by then, because the child had got used to a combination of formula milk and my breast milk, and now he was not used to the direct breast milk, direct feeding. So I actually faced a lot of issues doing it, because the flow, I mean, for the child, it's like, whatever is convenient, it works that way. So I did struggle a lot with it while I wanted to. And as I was telling you before the session also, there was always a feeling that, okay, am I not being able to feed my child? What is wrong? It's some sort of a guilt feeling you go through. And then I realized, and then when I also made me feel it's okay. I mean, and a lot of my other friends also said it's okay if you're not able to. You don't have to stress over it so much. So, that's really what happened with me.
Dr. Mahima, what's your take?
So, yes, that is a challenge. When babies initially they become used to getting easy access to milk without putting in too much of efforts, and they are getting easy access. So it does become a little challenging in such situations for the babies to get back to putting effort onto the breast, to do the suckling, to take the milk from the breast. Quite challenging for the baby, and plus for the mother also it becomes very challenging, because the mother is wanting to do it, she's trying her best, but ultimately she doesn't see the situation that she had expected during her pregnancy, that okay, when it comes to breastfeeding, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. So it does become very challenging for the mother, and plus also for the baby, because even though the baby wants to try to breastfeed, but the mother is not able to do it.
Dr. Mahima, I think we've lost you again. Okay, we're going to give her 5 more seconds and see if we can, get her back, or else we'll just move to the next question. Okay, so while she comes back, Archana mentioned something very interesting about guilt. In your case, Archana, you spoke about how, your baby was small because he was premature. In my personal case, and again, very personal story, sharing it here. My daughter was, when she was born, she was 4 kilos. And therefore, the amount of milk she required was a lot more. And guilt, it works both ways, right? You want to do it, but you can't do it. Sometimes you are able to do it, and the child is able to latch on, but it's still not adequate. What kind of emotions, emotionally, the pressure or the expectation from the world, from the society, from the family, from the doctors, and from yourself, in terms of wanting and knowing that breast milk is important for the child? How do you think it plays on a mother's mind?
So it was very stressful, Rashmi, because of course we have been reading about it even while we were pregnant as to how important it is. We were doing sessions. I had done some sessions before childbirth as to how you need to, make sure this is how you have to feed. So all the techniques were taught, right? But when reality hit, none of those technicalities worked. So I knew the advantages of it, but at the same time, thankfully, I had my set of friends and my family and people who had gone through it and their children were doing perfectly fine. There were friends of mine who never were able to lactate. So, they told me that, and I saw their children, they were doing perfectly fine. So it was always a mixed bag of emotions, where on one side I really tried hard. Like, I didn't give up. I kept trying. So that was from my end. I did whatever I could. But then when I realized that it is not working out, or not working out to the extent I wanted to, I wouldn't say that it didn't work out. It did work out after all the effort, but not the way I would have ideally wanted it to. So then I kind of came to terms with it, that it's okay. There is no point stressing yourself over it, and feeling so guilty and feeling responsible for what's going on, because it's not something where I have gone wrong. So I think that's very important for women to understand, that we don't need to blame ourselves for things going the way they're going.
Very well said, Archana. I think I completely agree with you, because stress only adds and compounds the problem. Dr. Naima, I hope we have you back. Yeah, you're back. So the question that I was asking was the expectation from women, the expectation that they put on themselves, the expectation that the society has, and rightfully so, right? We all know breast milk is important for the child. So what happens when, for whatever reason, a woman is unable to lactate, or not produce adequate milk for the baby? From an emotional perspective, how do you think this plays onto a woman's mind, and what would be your two bits in terms of how to deal with it?
So, I think ultimately it's a woman's choice. It's the woman's body, it's the woman's choice. She should not feel under pressure to do something which is only stressing herself out, and, putting too much pressure on her, which ends up ruining her own health. So we have to respect the choice of the women. If she decides to breastfeed her baby, it's good that it's good for the baby. But also, in case a mother decides not to breastfeed her baby, we should not judge a woman in the society. We have to respect the choices that a woman makes. So I think society puts a lot of pressure on the women in terms of, expecting her to do everything perfectly well, which in a lot of cases doesn't happen. But if we also go on to, educate women about what is good for her body, what is good for the baby, and ultimately let her take the decision. We can't force a woman, to do this or to do that. Ultimately, we have to respect the decision she takes for herself and her baby, because she will also want the best for her child. So I think it's very important for people to not judge a woman for the choices she makes, and ultimately we all have to respect her choice.
Very well said. Now, moving to the core of what our topic is today: women at breastfeeding and work hand in hand. We did speak about a little bit about the policies. We did speak about how sometimes it's hard, and we spoke about entrepreneurs and women who are employed by others. Archana, you run your own company, and I know that you have some wonderful policies around menstrual leaves, which is unheard of it's still very rare. And you did briefly mention that you have made arrangements in your organization for women who need to breastfeed. But what's your overall experience been? You run a law firm, right? And don't give me policies, don't give me facts, but tell me how difficult or easy it is for women to come back to work, and what can organizations do to support them?
Right. So, Rashmi, the timing of this question is also very critical, given that we are in this ongoing pandemic that has forced organizations and entrepreneurs to reassess the widely accepted norms. Our realities are changing quite quickly, right, as of today. So if we take cognizance and we respect the nature of our reality as it stands now, I think the only way to respond to this question is that it is a work in progress, with organizations adapting to and now being comfortable with work from home. Many are doing away with their physical office spaces entirely. So where in the past, my automatic response to a question like this would have been that you have a provision of a cordoned off, safe physical space where working mothers could enter, they could, express their breast milk or nurse their babies, have a creche and continue their work. It has now become a combination, and it is more of a matter of flexibility to also allow women to schedule their client meetings and manage their deliverables to the best extent possible. And this becomes very relevant for the legal industry, especially because this is, it's a very, very fast paced, very high demanding profession. So women are always very overworked, and I mean that's how it is in our profession. So while and if you talk about some of the cities like Delhi and Mumbai, they're leading these kind of transformative steps on creating women friendly workspaces. We do hear some of the organizations taking that effort to have creches and to have allocated spaces. So and in fact that was my thought as well. I discussed it with the partnership that we must have a creche, and we had decided to do so, but then pandemic hits. But I'm hoping that we are able to pick it up when life normalizes, and that's in my to-do bucket list.
Fantastic. I think Dr. Mahima has unfortunately dropped off again, and I think we'll continue with the conversation until she joins us back in. Yeah, I think the pandemic has definitely made it a little bit more easier for women to continue with the workforces, and it's also made it easier for organizations to some extent to be able to offer that the flexibility that earlier maybe they couldn't. I think it just showed us a new way of life, right? Dr. Mahima, I'm not sure you heard the question before you dropped off. We would love to hear your take on how organizations, how should organizations look at the entire breastfeeding and mothers getting back to work. Any inputs from you would be more than welcome.
Yes. So, yeah, Roshni, I think that it's very important for companies to understand that it is baby's food, it's baby's right. The baby has a right to breastfeed. And WHO recommends exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, but after that, the breastfeeding still continues. It's not that breastfeeding stops. So mothers could have, various challenges where probably, there's nobody at home to take care of the baby. Maybe someday, she needs to take it off, or she should have the, permission to work from home, and she, cannot go to office. So I think that aspect should be there. That flexibility should be there for a working mother when she joins back office. And also that should continue for a quite long time. And not just the woman, even the father. Even the father should have that flexibility, because we can't just expect the mother to take it off every time she has to be there for the baby. Express breastfeed can be given by the father also. So that flexibility should be given to dads as well.
Very fair point.
There's a new father, in office who requires an off. So I think that flexibility companies need to keep it as a policy, so that it's easier for the couple together to, ensure that the baby gets breastfeeding continued once the mother joins back office.
Fantastic. I have a question again for both of you. We've all worked, right? We're working, and while on one side we love to talk about the rights that a woman should get at the workplace and the policies that should be in favor of of the women who are working. As an entrepreneur myself, and I think Archana is also here, and for you too, for that matter, right? All three of us here have been entrepreneurs, and one of the very important question to also address is it practical for organizations? And we're not just talking about large multinational companies where thousands of people are employed. We're talking also about startups. India is big on startups today, right? Is it practical for companies to give maternity leave for 6 months and then still be able to give all of these flexibilities, once the woman is back to work? So a little bit, I would love to hear again from both of you. What is your take on this? And please be very pragmatic. Let's not say things which are diplomatic and sound good, but might not be pragmatic. So what do you think? Archana, I would love to start with you.
Sure. So my thought, Rashmi, here has been that it is a little difficult. I will not deny it, because even when we are from the side of the hiring, we are the ones, when we are hiring somebody, and we do hear there's going to be a long break. So what we expect is, as long as the commitment is there, and that's why, bringing to what Mahima was saying earlier, organizations should also start talking about paternity leaves and not just maternity leaves. And why I say that is that if there's a woman in a particular organization and her husband is in another organization, if they're both getting the requisite leaves, then the woman doesn't have to do everything on her own. While breastfeeding is, of course, at her end, but then we can have those flexibilities around, coming, working from home and office, do a combination of those things. So having said that, it is difficult, definitely, for organizations, but therefore, this is the time to really have that equality between men and women and give the men also, and I'm sure they also they're also looking forward to certain responsibility of fatherhood, because I always say this, that it's like the way, we've been conditioned that the woman is supposed to do a certain thing. Even for a man, it's always conditioned that he's supposed to be the bread earner. So there's a responsibility on the man as well. So if we all allow them to just be and help them spend time with their children equally, I think things may get a little better.
Fantastic. Beautifully said. Dr. Mahima. Oh no, and I think we've lost her again. But yes, I do agree with you. We'll just wait for 5 seconds for her to join in before we continue. But I do agree with you. I think fathers play such an important role, and we almost always sideline them because I think even together as a family, breastfeeding is such a beautiful experience, right? It brings three people together, and not just the mother and the child. So yes, we have Dr. Mahima back. Dr. Mahima, same question. We were waiting for you to join us back in and to hear from you.
Sorry, I missed the question.
I said it was the same question about how difficult is it for organizations to be so flexible. So first they have the 6 months policy for maternity leave, and then post that, we still expect flexibility. Is it practical for us to expect that from organizations? Keep in mind, we're not talking about large organizations, but also startups and smaller organizations where the number of people are much lesser. Dr. Mahima, we can't hear you.
Rashmi, till Dr. Mahima comes back, I just want to say, like, Virat Kohli has done a huge favor for closing gender parity by setting the example of how paternity leaves are also important, right?
Absolutely.
So once when more men are allowed to be more than just working men, and they're able to embrace other aspects of their lives, such as fatherhood, as much as that conversation is about sharing responsibilities at home, it is also about sharing responsibilities and economic benefits at work as well, right? I mean, it'll be naive to think that hiring managers are free of such prejudices. We enough and more case studies that show how deeply ingrained gender inequality is. And what we also don't realize is that it is a huge economic loss as well, right? Because with women comprising a large chunk of our population, the country cannot advance if women don't. We cannot, not have the feminine characteristics that are integral to effective leadership. And the loss is also in the indirect sense as well, because imagine if children don't have examples of working mothers, how will we have a progressive generation?
Very well said. Fantastic. Archana, completely agree with you. I have always said this. I think the expectation is, we talk about women not having equal rights and all of that. I think men also have the burden of being breadwinners solely. They are expected to do that, and a softer side is somehow overlooked, or we don't talk about how women should also be equally contributing to the economic side of things. We have Dr. Mahima back, and hopefully this time we'll not, have a leap.
Sorry.
Dr. Mahima, back to you. No, not completely understand. This can't be helped.
Yes.
So would you like to answer the question?
Yes.
I'm not sure you could hear. Yeah, perfect.
Yes. So I was mentioning, I agree with Archana that it is quite difficult for organizations as well, to keep that flexibility maintained, to give frequent leaves whenever required, because it becomes very difficult to say a no when, a new parent is coming and asking for relief for the child. But I think things can get easier if, now that everything has been digital and companies have realized that work from home is possible. So I think if that continues even after COVID goes away, it would be easier for new parents to have that flexibility maintained and for work not to suffer, so that it becomes easier for the organizations as well. And secondly, I think provision of daycares in all the companies, if that is possible, that would make things much easier, not just for the parents, but also for the organizations to ensure that the work efficiency is maintained and at the same time, even parents get that flexibility. So I think these two options would be quite good for parents and the companies.
Fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? And Dr. Mahima, you first. We've heard very little from you today, unfortunately, because of the connection. But anything that you think broadly that organizations and society can do to ensure, and forget whether it's a mother's responsibility or a father's responsibility, but overall to just ensure that that babies get breast milk, and how do you think we can make it a more inclusive thing overall?
So, one thing which I strongly feel, and I tell a lot of people also, is that in olden days, when people would live in joint families, they would see each other
Yeah.
breastfeeding the baby at home. That normalcy was more maintained in olden days when people were together living in joint families. Now, what happens is I see because people are not living in joint families, they're in nuclear families. They haven't seen too many people breastfeeding at home. They're not well versed with the whole concept of breastfeeding. Or mother-in-laws used to be there to guide them earlier. Now it's a nuclear family. There are not too many elderly people, living in the same house to help a new mother continue breastfeeding at home. So I think that is quite challenging in nuclear families. And if that normalcy can be maintained, like not just waiting for breastfeeding week to happen, even throughout the year. If the whole awareness of breastfeeding continues and women are there out in the public, openly talking about their breastfeeding journey and encouraging each other to breastfeed. And like Archana said, every breastfeeding journey is not happy and smooth. So women also need to talk about the challenges that they face along with breastfeeding. So I think that will help women to feel more comfortable and to understand that it's not easy, it's going to be difficult, but at the same time, it's good for you, it's good for the baby. Try your best, but then leave the rest to nature. Don't freak
Fantastic.
out about it if it's not happening.
Fantastic. Archana, same question for
I,
you.
com- I completely agree with Dr. Mahima. As I said before as well, I think that's exactly the motto which we should follow. Because in addition to, like she said, that now there are nuclear families, there's also the stress factor is much more in today's day and age.
Yeah.
The number of hours we put in into work, and then therefore marrying that into trying to breastfeed the child, that's what makes it difficult. But I think we as women should do whatever best we can, and to each her own. I don't think there is any cookie cutter approach. There is no right, no wrong. Each one of us have their own. We have our own choices, and I think that's what we should follow.
Thank you. I think that was a wonderful discussion with both of you, and I think to the audience, yes, this is not I mean I'm not sure whether we'll be able to answer all the questions, but please do leave your questions in the comments, and we'll definitely, I mean, if not on the show, we'll definitely respond back to those. Thank you once again. Thank you, Dr. Mahima, for joining us. Thank you, Archana, for sharing such a personal story. I think it was nice to hear the other side. And thank you, Voice of Healthcare and MCare Pharmaceuticals once again. It was wonderful being on the show with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rashmi. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you as always. Thanks, Dr. Mahima. Thank you,
Thank you,
Voice of
Archana.
Healthcare.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rashmi.
Yeah.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.